I'm excited to introduce our last session to cap off EA Sustain, edition number 1. And it is with Farmer Sangay, who has flown in from Bhutan, and I'm sorry that he came on a plane with all of its carbon emissions, directly from Bhutan to join us for this weekend. And I won't tell you too much about him, but that I will just say that he is a die-hard farmer, that is in his own words, from a country actually where the vast majority of people, actually no longer, the majority of the citizens are farmers, but importantly, he represents I call him an avatar of change and innovation in Bhutan because he's an entrepreneur, he's an innovator, and he actually shares a lot with his counterpart, who will be in conversation with him, John Pawsey, who, if you haven't already figured it out, at Groundswell, he's called Regen Royalty. He's literally the leading regenerative farmer in East Anglia, and has also been an incredible help brainstorm partner, and has basically practically co-hosted this event with me. And it's thanks to him, actually, that I had the guts to put on this entire event. So thank you. So thank you to John and Alice Pawsey, who are my good friends and partners in crime in this crazy project called EA Sustain. But please, have fun, since this is the last session. This will be fascinating and unconventional.
Can I say, I have properly been looking forward to this session, and I just want to tell you a little bit about my introduction to Farmer Sangay. Joanne, and you don't want to, I shouldn't say this, you don't piss Joanne off, okay? But anyway, we arranged to have a Zoom call so I could meet with Farmer Sangay before this session. It was earlier on in the week. And I started looking into Farmer Sangay the day before and that morning. And I just went down this rabbit hole on his Facebook page. He's got 140,000 followers. And it was one of those things where you sort of start looking at something. And I thought I'd been looking at my computer for over 20 minutes, and sort of an hour and a half had gone by when I was just watching this amazing feed of you going out with your daughter and tending your vegetables on the farm, and then you'll sort of walk up to a monastery, and we've all taken children up quite long hills, and she was coping incredibly well with it, and the barking dogs outside them. I mean, it's just so engaging, absolutely fantastic. And then the next day, before I was going to do the Zoom call, I watched an hour-long interview with it was a Bhutanese radio? Yeah. And I completely forgot about the time. And then I got this text from Joanne, or this missed call, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've forgotten, because I was just looking. So then suddenly I had virtual Farmer Sangay onto actual Zoom call with Farmer Sangay, and it was just a massive enlightening sort of moment. And there he was, and I was actually talking to him. So it was just a great experience. And actually, funnily enough, when we were talking, and I sort of want this session just to be more of a conversation, but also what I would really like, sort of breaking away from sort of convention for the rest of the talks, if anyone's got a question while we're sort of going through the session, please raise your hand and just give us a couple of minutes to get the microphone to you, because they want to record it all. But if you just have a burning question halfway through because you think, what are they talking about? I want to know more about that. I might forget it. I think we should just have questions as we go through.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So listen, I'm going to start off with the obvious question that we're going to want to ask in a country where we, well, a lot of us celebrate GMP. You have a gross national happiness in Bhutan as a measure of your success. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit how that works?
GNH is a socio-economic development philosophy or a framework that is built on the foundation of 4 principles, 9 domains and 72 indicators, and it goes further to sub-indicators. Much like Ginian progress indicators or other development philosophies, GNH actually guides our path to modernity without compromising on the values of our ecological values, spiritual values, our socio-economic values, and also the good governance values that human needs to progress further and attain more health, well-being, and happiness in society.
Okay, and how is the information gathered?
So there have been research for a long time. The initial term was coined around 1972 when our fourth Dragon King was in a global leaders conference somewhere in Delhi in India, leaders conclave, and every leader were discussing about what's your GDP, what's your country's GDP, and then he was asked, and then he submitted that for his country, gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. And that was the first public announcement in media. That was before our Bhutanese media, the Indian media caught that in 1972. But long time back itself, our leaders, our enlightened leaders have always had their own philosophy of guiding our country through the turmoil, and that's how it has come about. But that was the only official time it has been pronounced. But if you look at the current situation, GNH has been applied more through the policy formulations at the government level, at the national level, and also recently, in past 10 years or so, there were discussions about GNH in businesses. There were many entrepreneurs, and also there were guidelines and research papers built upon where entrepreneurs can also apply the philosophy of GNH in their businesses. And at individual level, at family level, and I am more interested in applying GNH at the family level on the farm, and that's where I come in.
Okay, but I think, but how is it? Is it sort of collected on an individual basis? But I'm just wondering, you know, how is it going? I mean, how does it in practice? Has it sort of you know, sort of galvanized into a thing where actually people are happier?
Okay. So there are two things to respond to your inquiry. So first of all, there is a big institution which is called Bhutan Center for Bhutan Studies and GNH. So it is a dedicated academic researchers there. There are many thinkers who are actually studying a lot of anthropological studies. There are many ecological studies. There were many research going on. And they have built up a lot of academic papers and research, which is strictly based on Bhutanese conditions of the past informations in the present, and also predicting some of them for the future.
Okay.
And every 5 years, so GNH has been applied or has been used in our 5-year planning processes, and we are more like towards the end of the 12th 5-year plan in Bhutan in terms of modern development. And every 5 years, there's a national survey which actually measures if all these plans and programs that has been implemented through 5-year program has made sense, has it achieved the desired goals or not. And that has been happening. The last survey was around 2015. And in 2022, the survey has happened. But right now, I asked, and then they are still in the process of analysis and some more, yeah.
And do they sort of break it down into sections of society? Because obviously, you know, we were talking earlier, and you have more of an agrarian society than we do. The figure was, you know, sort of 60% of people who are connected with the land?
Yes. Yeah. So we're still a very much agrarian society. Yeah. We are about 70% of the total population depends on land, and they are farmers.
Okay, and actually in the 2015 survey, how did farmers come out on the sort of GNS scale?
So it's interesting to look at the whole.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so
microphone.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
I can just turn mine off. Don't kill me. Yeah. Actually, can you tell us some of the objective indicators which make up the index?
Well, actually, it's because you say there's 9, but actually then there's all these other subsections. Yeah. I try to find those. But yes, can you just go through the 9? Yes.
So the 4 pillars, the foundation pillars are equitable socio-economic development, which is sustainable socio-economic development is the first pillar. Second is the protection and conservation of the nature and environment around, and the promotion and preservation of the culture and traditions, and the good governance. They were the 4 pillars, yeah. So at the government level, any projects that's happening in the country, including FDIs, that's why we have very less FDI in the country right now. So everything has been screened through the GNH processes at the GNH Commission. It's like a planning commission in any other country, but we call it in Bhutan the Gross National Happiness Commission.
Okay.
So once the projects are put through that, it has to be either GNH positive or GNH neutral at least. So that it will not harm any of these pillars.
And Joanne was saying, what's the FDI? FDI?
Foreign direct
Yeah, sorry, you did say, yeah.
Foreign direct investments. Yeah.
Okay. That's just fascinating. I mean, going back to your 140,000 Facebook followers, I'm only in about 10,500 on Twitter, so I just feel so, I feel like I've failed so badly. But I think what's really interesting about it, and people sort of poo-poo, probably not a Bhutanese phrase, but people poo-poo social media because they don't really understand it. But I remember listening to an early Twitter adopter, and this was a lady, and she was a gardener. And she used to put up a tweet once or 2 or 3 times a day about what she was doing in her garden. And in the early days, she amassed thousands of followers. And it was just an organic sort of growth of her, what she was doing. She was obviously a very engaging person. And then she invented a really interesting garden implement, and I don't know what it was, but then suddenly she was able to sell this to this sort of captive audience of people. But I think what I like about it is not necessarily about that, it's about the fact that there was no sort of intention to grow her Twitter following. She just loved engaging with people, and obviously it made her richer in material terms with selling her product. But as far as I'm concerned, I'd really like to get your view on this. Is that I feel that I've also gathered my minuscule following just by being honest and actually talking in a very positive way and engaging with people, and also through a huge amount of learning. And I think it's given me opportunities to meet so many more people than I ever would have met. I haven't been to Bhutan yet, but I just wondered, how did you start on your social media journey? Because it is about communication and it's incredibly important.
I would say that the world at this point in time needs positivity, and that's what I intentionally make sure that whatever I put out there is positive, it's constructive, and there's a value to everyone who visits there. Not necessarily so much objective driven, but like more of a chilled contents, nature contents, things like that. But I must tell you that my journey on Facebook or social media, it's called Farmer Sangay. Yeah, so you can connect to me there. I have no business cards. You can always reach me there. Yeah, journey started around 2011 after a very profound near-death experience around 2009. And after sleeping bedridden for a year, I came out, I resigned from my job, and I went back home to return back to my roots to become a farmer. And that's where I started a page called Farmer Sangay. And initially, the intention was that when I went back, most of my fellow farmers were from the other generation, and they may not really understand the kind of scientific approach, the kind of market dynamics that the world is going through. They do not really understand that. And it was quite a lonely sort of a journey, and I need to find my tribes, I need to connect to more people, I need to connect to customers. That's how I began the journey. And it was like maybe 2 years ago, it only had maybe 25,000 people or something like that on the page.
Only 25?
Yeah. And then 2 years ago...
I thought we were going to get on.
Yeah, anyway, before 2 years ago, I returned back after the pandemic, and I was surprised that in 1 year itself, it just crossed 100,000. Yeah. And that's to do with also the pandemic situation, and people are all confined to their space, and people need nature. And my page was that time more like a gateway to nature. And many people reach out to me, they call. I had many video conferences. I had many, many interesting moments during that time. And it just organically grew. And I have no words for that yet.
I mean, you are now unfortunately called this terrible word, an influencer, and their responsibilities come with that. Mm. And how do you deal with those responsibilities? Because if you've got that many people engaging with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you could abuse it, I suppose, or you could use it for positive good. How do you take that responsibility? How do you execute that?
So some things have not really changed from the day it started. Let's say when my life changed, I found a new meaning and purpose in my life, and the page means my way of actually reinforcing that for myself.
Can you just go back a bit and just tell us a little bit about that life change, though? Is that possible? Are you able to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So when I had I had an auto car accident. I was even declared death in the national newspaper because I had an accident just next to their office on the highway. And I was bedridden for a year, and my whole body changed. And of course, I was badly, badly injured. And many doctors still don't believe that I'm alive here. And that's what has happened. But what really happened, I call it profound near-death experience. Because after a few days, when I discovered that I was given a second chance to relive this life, I was so super happy. And that never went away, even now. I'm so grateful that I got a chance to meet you, John, and many people here, and many people online. And my life continued, you know. And in the process, when you were, the one thing I learned in this process of change was the power of surrender.
The power of surrender.
Yeah, initial 1 month was a tough turmoil because accident when it happens, you don't know when it happens, and you have many plans for tomorrow, in the next year, in the 10 year, in the whole lifetime. That's how humans are. And then suddenly you are just put on the bed, and then your mind is just running like a rat race because your body is injured and you can't move anywhere. And your mind is saying you have to go there, this is your appointment, and this is your time to go, move out, and all these things are happening. And that was the moment where I realized that it's not going to be good for me. So I have just surrendered, said, okay, all I'm going to do is focus on myself, and I'm going to go through this process of healing. And that's where I had the moment of presence in myself. And after that, I think my life changed after that.
But what was really interesting, actually, instead of then continuing your job in the city, you made the decision about just to go home and start farming. So how did that come about?
But my love for nature was there ever since I was a little child, I would say. I grew up on the farm. We were playing in the woods, and you know, our village just is a very small village with 20 households, and everyone is so free and close. We have amazing social life, and that's my life, you know. I thought it's so amazing. I should come back, you know, and live with my parents to become a farmer. That decision was long time back there, and then it just continued. After my high school, I went to a training college, and I studied agriculture in the scientific methods. And then life has given me the chance to go and experience in the job, and I want to really go to Ministry of Agriculture and learn the whole ministry from inside. So I served for a brief 4 years in the service, and then I resigned to go back home.
Let's talk about agriculture. Can you just describe you know, because there's a, you know, obviously you're in the foothills of the Himalayas, and so there are a huge amount of valleys, and so there's a lot of terracing done.
Yeah.
We also discussed that there are some sort of fields on the sort of the valley floor, but a lot of people are sort of working on those terraces. And you said a really, really interesting thing when we were speaking, because I would say, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly in the organic movement in the UK, there is a suspicion against, you know, tech, because, well, for a number of reasons, which we don't necessarily have to go into, but there is a fear that it's going to take more people away from farms. It's going to, I mean, you know, we have I was saying we haven't really spoken about this at the East Anglian Festival, but I mean, you know, we're losing some of the sort of the local accents that we have. So there's a Norfolk accent, a Suffolk accent, and there's an Essex accent. And pretty much in Essex, it's very difficult to hear an Essex accent on a farm nowadays. In Suffolk, a little bit more. Norfolk, quite a few more, because they really are. It's bow and arrow country up there. You know, they haven't really joined us in the 22nd century. 22nd century. Gosh, it's been a long day. But you said something really, really interesting, and it was about the fact that the Bhutanese government are having a big drive for importing or leasing out large bits of machinery, but actually, if you're thinking about farming on the terraces, actually that's not necessarily appropriate. Can you talk a little bit about how your vision with the use of modern technology in farming in that situation, and how to still protect your own culture? How would that work?
So one of the purpose in my life is to figure out the future of small holding family farms in the context of my country, because many things have changed in last 20, 30 years, and much like any other country around the world, I think small holding families are the most vulnerable group of people.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I think it's the social value of the gross national happiness which has really kept and maintained our society, the social fabrics and a lot of ecological values, everything is there. So if you look at from the prism of the GNH, there are 4 pillars, right? So we are struggling at the moment with the socio-economic development, economic transformation happening at the moment, but we have a very good, resilient, in fact, thriving ecological system there. We also have a very good governance system, I would say. At the same time, we also have a very good culture and social values and fabrics as well. And at this point in time, in the modern 21st century, economic transformation it's a key focus of everyone that is involved in the process of the change. And so the farmers are at the center of it, because all our farmers are traditional farmers, it's small-holding farmers. We are very much ecologically sustainable, but not economically sustainable at the moment. Like, for instance, in my own family, of course, we need to just buy salt and a bit of oil and small essentials, and everything's there. We have free healthcare system, we have free education, so everything is there. But still, people, they want to have more economic liberty, and therefore, the purpose of my life is to really rethink, going forward, how these small family farms can also make good economic opportunities and leverage what's there to go into the future. And that can only be done given the situation like ours, very hilly, we are very small holding. Therefore, we need to make use and leverage technologies and, the smart technologies that is being offered by the global evolution and the revolution of the industrial revolution, I would say.
Okay, I thought...
So that is the only choice,
yes,
in many sense.
Yeah, but I was sort of thinking along the lines of if you're talking about these these fragile, to a certain extent, these terrace systems, is that people, rather than ever bringing any kind of heavy machinery in there, just completely embrace the sort of robotic sort of revolution and have people working alongside robots, rather than having this thing where everyone thinks that robots are going to sort of drive people off the land. Because actually, I have a very similar conversation with the guys that work on our farm, and I took them to an agricultural show, and there was this massive, great big robot with a huge, great cultivator on the back, charging up and down this field. And one of them said, well, that's my job, gone, because I won't be needed anymore. And I just think it's not right. I think it's actually just engaging, because they will, it'll free them up to really focus on the detail of getting all the other things right that they can't do when they're actually currently sitting on a tractor. Because at the moment, what's happening is people are just sitting in a hermetically sealed cab. And effectively, they're acting in a sort of a digital sort of world anyway, because they've got a bank of screens down one side of it, which is being guided by a satellite, and they're looking at all these bits and pieces. But actually, if they could actually get off that thing and actually focus on some more of the detail, and probably be more productive, but actually, focus on the detail that stops us using, well, we don't use any inputs, so it's a bad example in our cage. But I mean, I just think those people would be skilled up in a different area. And I wondered if that would be, because these things are light, and is there any future of that sort of happening in your farming system, do you think?
I think because of our unique situation, let's say we're small, we are all terrace, stiff.
Yes.
We cannot really use, unlike the rest of the world, very heavy machineries. No. We have to use small, selective, smart technologies.
Yes. Like
sensors that can measure the moisture, the nutrient content. So these are the things that I think is the only choice we have, and it's also the kind of very human choice, I believe. Yeah. And we do have small power tillers, machines that can actually remove some of the very difficult tasks on the farm. Mm-hmm. And it also makes farming much more lively, because it's just semi-mechanized. When everything has to be done by people, it's also very difficult.
Yes.
Life becomes very difficult.
Absolutely.
But when we mixed with a part machine, part mechanization, and a part human, I think it's a good combo for now.
Yeah.
And going forward, I would say that in order for our smallholding farmers to really sustain and go into future, we need to work on other areas like transforming our food and nutritional habits, our behavioral change through eating patterns. And let's say in last 30, 40 years, everyone in Bhutan started eating rice 3 times a day. And also there are other pressures where we have other products that is made mainly rice as a raw material, like puff rice, there were like rice flakes, and there are many snacks which are putting a lot of pressure on the water and the wetland, and which is also not necessarily healthy. No. Many people cannot really handle the kind of energy that they intake, and therefore I think we need to go through that transformation of our
and so
dietary habits.
what kind of changes you can see in that area? Because actually that would sort of replicate in lots of other parts of the world as well. How would you see your diet changing? What do you think you need to be growing to solve those sort of problems of, you know, water usage and so on and so forth?
We don't have to really look for a lot of things. It's just my parents' generation, they had a very diverse food habit, let's say. They maybe most of them had maybe 1 time of rice in a week, and mostly they have buckwheat, they have wheat, they have a lot of other cereals and grains, which has always been a part of their food basket. And also, like I heard yesterday and day before yesterday also, it's everywhere in the world. It's a farmer's sentiment and trajectory, I believe. It's something to do with social status and all of that, right? So initially, during my parents' generation, eating rice is also to do with social status. So most elite people, they always have rice, you know. So that has really played a lot of role in last few decades, where everyone started putting more emphasis on the rice cultivation, making sure that their food self-sufficiency is more like having enough rice.
Yes, I think
they haven't really think about the nutritional component or the other aspects of the dietary system. Yes. And therefore, if we look back like 30 years ago, then we have to activate. We have all these seeds and the culture and the wisdom, everything's there. Just that we need to change the habit and also maybe develop good recipes in the product that will make it more trendy. So when people are shifting from a very proud red rice to maybe a potato or a buckwheat, it should be like a treat instead of like going down and feeling bad. They should feel, wow, this is a change, this is good, you know.
Is that the kind of thing you sort of put out on your social media feed about, you know, changing your own diet as well?
I haven't really come out yet, but I have been experimenting on myself for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Maybe
you're looking okay.
Yeah, maybe 5 years. maybe 5 years ago, I had like 82 kgs. That's me. You know, I was like huge.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have been cutting down on my rice, and just to see, you know, it's easy to go on social media and ask people to do things, but unless we experience it, I think it may not be relatable. That's why I have experienced a lot of change in my psychological well-being, in my mental well-being, and at the same time my physical well-being also. Yeah. So there's a lot of benefit of diversifying food and going more of a plant-based sort of a dietary system, I would say.
Did anyone hear he said, I was really huge, I was 82 kilos? Right, I'm going to be getting on the scales when I get back home. So the other thing I wanted to really talk to you about, and this is, you know, purely as a personal point of view because I'm an organic farmer, is that, you know, Bhutan had an ambition to be 100% organic by 2020. And obviously we have sort of ringing in our ears the sort of disaster that sort of, well, you know, the unfortunate situation in Sri Lanka where they actually banned pesticides and artificial fertilizers, and it ended up by ensuing sort of shortages of supplies. But in Bhutan, it was very interesting because it wasn't enforcing it; it was an ambition. But you haven't you know, got to that, and I just wondered, you know, why you felt that that ambition hadn't been realized. What happened?
So there are a couple of things to share on that. First of all, Bhutan organic, 100% organic 2020 was a national aspiration. Yeah. It also came out of the philosophy of GNH, where it is very much in line with the values that the whole country wants to go. Mm-hmm. And unless the farming system is put right, I think other development makes no sense. No. It's a foundation. I personally believe that agriculture is the mother of all other culture. So therefore, that having a national aspiration was something very right. But then we have been challenged by two particular situations I would like to share. The first one is the generational change that we were going through. Let's say my parents were on my family farm. My father and mother, they were the founders of the land. They moved from the highland to the lowland in pursuit of red rice again and the warmer climate. And they have really cleared up the whole hill and made terraces. There were no machines. It's literally like they had to carry all of us in their back, and then they spent their whole life making all these terraces. And at one point I was thinking, like, my family farm is like 9 acres, not big, but if you have to make all the terraces on 9 acres, it takes lifetime. And it's like, if you stretch all these terraces together, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe 30 kilometers, something like that. It's really, really a huge task. And they have done that, and then they have handed over the whole culture to us. My generation, I'm the second generation of farmers in my family in the particular land right now. And then the modernity started. The promise of modernity is so promising that many young people, unlike any other country in the world, wants to go out to the city and want to pursue other sort of a lifestyle instead of being in the village and working on the land. So that has happened, and which is why we have very less workforce on the farm right now.
Okay.
So that is a huge challenge.
So was that the limiting factor? It was the amount of people
it has taken away a lot of young, able farmers, let's say, people from the village to the cities, and they are into a different occupation. So there's a huge migration of the generation from the farming sector to other sectors, let's say IT or all sort of other sectors.
Yeah.
So that's why we have a very difficult situation. In every village, we have very less able people living in the village, young people. The other situation for myself, for those who are staying back and pursuing the farming life, I think organic farming, as we were introduced as a modern organic farming, which requires a lot of certification by the third party to a lot of agencies and the cost, actually did not make much sense to us smallholders like ourselves. Sure. And at the same time, we really do not know who's behind giving all these seals and all things like that. And in fact, my own family land has been, part of my family land has been EU certified for past 3 years, and since last year I have also withdrawn from there. Okay. Thinking that there may be a more progressive, more reliable and relevant concepts. And this time I came here, and one big takeaway is like the measuring the carbon. Sure. What do you call that?
Yeah, as in carbon soil organic, the carbon in your soils. Yes.
Yes, I think these are things that would really suit to Bhutanese conditions.
Sure.
Like we have 4 seasons, and we rotate crops very much anyway. And then also because we mostly target on the rice, like maybe half of the year, 70–80% of our land is always fallow. It's left, So a lot of grasses grow, a lot of cows have been grazing, cattle's grazing. So it's always somehow there's a traditional system which is supporting the biodiversity on the farm. And when I learned in my own experience that when the EU certification, when they came in, there were many, many methods which were not really relatable, Okay. It's to do with maybe a big commercial farm, it makes sense. Yeah. But for a smallholder, it doesn't make sense. But that's why we cannot pursue it further. But government has done a lot. There were huge research stations happening. There were 4 major research stations in the agriculture sector in Bhutan, and one of them has been dedicated for organic farming. And there were many trainings happening, and people are prepared in a sense. What I thought was interesting, though, is that one of the limiting factors that was said by organic farmers is that they couldn't find the right inputs to which I thought was interesting, because, of course, we've just tried to form a system where actually we don't buy any inputs in. So we're regenerating our soil through using livestock and lays. And I know we've just had a great talk from James about his seaweed product, and I should be engaging with more products like that. But I suppose that having sort of, and I suppose that, a little bit about our sort of farming background is when I came to the farm, so when I went to college, pretty much nobody sprayed any grassland at all. Nobody put any artificial nitrogen on grass. It was almost unheard of, and this was sort of, back in the late 70s, early 80s. Crops like oilseed rape, which is grown for cooking oil, if you were going to spray it, it maybe was sprayed once or twice a year, and now it's sprayed 7, 8, 9 times. Wheat crops are just being, sprayed continuously. And
found myself on this sort of treadmill that I really couldn't get off. And the amount of chemicals that we've been using in the UK has gone up and up. Maybe the active ingredients have gone down and they've become more sort of targeted. But it's the mixtures of all these things that we really don't understand how it's really affecting the long-term health of our soil. And so I'm sort of, I have this sort of mindset where I almost don't want anything extra that I've got to buy from somebody else to work, because I want to build a system where it's completely sort of a closed system. And so when I read that they were sort of worried about the sort of kind of inputs, I suddenly thought, in a country like yours where you obviously, I would assume that it grows crops incredibly well, because you have, and with your terrace system, you're probably, I would suggest that because you're farming in the foothills, probably the minerals in your soils are much greater than the minerals in our soils. And I just wondered, would you not be trying to create something without inputs? So using fertility, using clovers and all those kind of things that we would use to build soil fertility rather than buying stuff in. So I've explained that really badly, but I think that, so having come from a system where it was, less chemicals, on into maximum chemicals, it all going horribly wrong because of pesticide resistance and degradation of soils. I mean, the last thing you should be thinking of doing is doing that. She'd maybe engaging with what we've learned and trying to bypass that system and make it better for your farmers and for your soils.
Wow, thank you. So our traditional system is very natural.
Yes.
Like we have cattle, so every family has cattle, they have small chickens, and then we are depending largely on the biomass from the forest.
Yeah.
A lot of leaf mold, a lot of leaves, and it's incredible. If somebody really read through how organic farming is approached, that's traditionally how the Bhutanese farmers are.
Yeah.
Except that at this point in time, in our whole farming system, one most popular chemical input we use is a weedicide.
Yes.
It's a butachlor for rice.
Okay.
So there's one a weed which cannot be really controlled by hands.
Okay.
And we have to use that. But if we look at the neighboring countries again, the states of India, both like around our country, our rate of use is really, really minimal. In some of them say it's literally, if you check, it's not there.
Okay.
Nothing's there. They're saying it's
so you don't see your farming system going down that chemical route. You're sort of being very selective over what you use.
But also,
yes.
Yeah. So after converting to like a part into organic farm, like certified organic farm, we have also experimented. My family has experimented on some portion of rice cultivation without adding that, and we learned if we can do 4 times of weeding manually, which is difficult, of course, difficult. But it's doable. That has been the practice all the time, Then we get a better yield than the ones that we left to the inputs.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the robots are going to come in.
Exactly. That's where the smart farming.
Horrific scene of sort of robots crawling on over these terraces. It's a ridiculous thing to say. But it sort of comes on to my next point. And in one of the interviews I watched, you said this lovely phrase, which is, art should not be separated from life. And I think that it made me think, talking just about, thinking about how we've de-skilled our farmers, and we've made them feel that they are unable to make the most important agronomic decisions on their farms, because from a farming system where we were very much in touch with nature, in touch with how to regenerate our soils pre-chemicals, the whole industry has become so complicated. It's like I equate it to, well, there's 2 things. I lift up the bonnet of a modern car, and all you can see is this plastic cover. But underneath it is just an internal combustion engine. But because you see this expanse of something we don't recognize, we think we can't do it, so we just walk away and assume somebody else can do it. And another thing is, in this country, we used to have in garages, there used to be mechanics who, but now they're called fitters. Because what they do is that they, instead of taking in an alternator that is faulty and opening the alternator up and rewinding it or whatever they do to it to make it work again, they just take it off and they fit a new one. And I think that we've become sort of fitters. We've become, because 10 minutes left, really? Okay, and I think that we've de-skilled our farmers, and actually, it's a terrible shame. And but it also takes away creativity, and it takes away the art of farming as well. But it sounds like you've just got that in buckets. And so everyone understands all those side of things. But I thought it was a very interesting thing. And I've always thought as my farming journey is very creative and artistic. So I love that phrase. And very quickly, I just wanted to say this one thing. You also said, really interestingly, you said Bhutanese farmers are more influenced by nature than by Buddhism. And I thought that was really interesting because actually all of us who work outside and we are looking at the geology of where we are, the landscape where we are, we get a really good impression of what nature's forces has, you know, how our landscape has been hewn by nature over you know, billions of years. And when you come from a religion that believes in a creator, it makes it quite difficult to get with that gig, to be honest. But if you're a Buddhist, of course, you don't believe in a creator. So it's quite interesting that you said that. So can you just explain that, just for 2 minutes, and then we'll go and ask some questions?
Sure. So let's say my mother, my sister, even today, every morning they milk the cow, they will go and then they will worship, like, there's few stones in our field, which is like an element and the spirit of the land. There were some trees, there were some water bodies. They always worship and connect to them, you know. And towards the end of the day, before we sleep, they again go and offer some smoke to all the land, and that has been their way of life. And instead of going to a temple, they always go to nature, you know. They go and they connect to the spirit of the land. In that sense, I was saying. But again, Buddhism in the sense of not as a religion, but as a spiritual. I think Bhutanese people are very much spiritual at the moment, and that's something very special.
I
being
really
a farmer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, Alice and I went to a festival a few years ago, and one of the things, we went into this big teepee, and I don't know what was happening there, but anyway, we were told that when we go back on the farm, we must build a little shrine to something in the sort of north, south, east, west bits of the farm. And occasionally when you're in that area, just go and contemplate, you know, what you're doing on the farm and how it's all going. I was the only person who built a little shrine.
Oh, wow.
And I still go back to, Alice didn't build yours, did you, Alice? No.
That's great.
But I really relate to that. Listen, I'm so sorry. I've just been so engrossed by talking to you, and I feel that, you know, I've been ignoring everyone. Are there any questions? Because I just think this is a fascinating conversation. Any questions? Yes, please. Yes, for this gentleman here. And then...
How can you maintain a positive spirit in the prospect of climate change, which you must see going on around you every year after year on the farm?
I think being on the farm and having a very rich... Bhutan is also one of the 10 hot biodiversity hotspots in the world. And we have a very gifted ecology there. And of course, part of our country also we experience a very adverse effect of the climate change, like glacial lake melting, like water source disappearing and all of that. But vast majority still enjoys a very resilient ecology. And in that sense, I think we're able to be hopeful. Looking at the whole global perspective, I think the moment at this point is more optimistic than ever before. And of course, there are always a group of people who is like a day and night, I believe. It's like a right and left, you know. So there should be a force which has to inspire the positive people to do more. And I would like to think that way. But I think I am personally very optimistic, and more so with the emergence technologies and smart technologies that is now emerging in the market would be a solution, and it can leverage our human aspiration to pursue many collective dreams globally, I believe. And also, I think, looking at my daughter, or I have a daughter, and looking at much younger generation, the human consciousness that is collectively rising is to an extent which is very admirable, I would say. They don't need even education or advocacy. It's somewhat ingrained in their genetic consciousness to rise to the call of the time. And young people are way smarter, you know, and they are quite hopeful. And yeah. And also in my country, we have like around 65 to 70% of the total population aged below 35. Yeah. So the optimism is definitely there. And that's also where I think my presence on social media is triggered by that as well. I would like to believe that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Josiah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I sort of have a question. So the first thing I wanted to say was just for everyone in East Anglia to just bear in, I think it's really important that we keep in mind that 2/3 of the world is fed by smallholder farmers. It's really easy for us to think, because we see big fields, that it's big farms that are feeding the world. It's not. And but at the same time, it's really easy to over-romanticize the work on the land, and it's just really hard. And I just wondered, as you see the drift towards urbanization in Bhutan, which has happened in all sorts of other parts of the world and happened here 200-300 years ago, and technology is part of it, and social media communication, I wonder what we can do from here to support you in some way in this really important work of feeding people. How do we, I don't know what my question is.
For my country, our country Bhutan, we need the belief from the rest of the world. Sometime when that is a little bit vague, we also lose that and we cannot connect much. But we need the belief from the rest of the world. I was told by many people I met in my life that we are on the right path. And me as someone who is a local person, I also believe the same thing. And in these times of change, I think we are going through a very disruptive change in the whole world. Everything is so uncertain. And only certain thing is that humans can believe each other. And that's what we need. And we have many dreams that not only is important for Bhutanese, but as a human species, I think we are more like a living museum. If you come there, of course we have many people who are emotionally not happy, but the degree of suffering is very less, I would say. And vast majority of the people are content with the kind of life we have, the kind of leadership we have, the kind of the situation we are in is quite optimistic, and we want the world to. We would like to request you all to believe in us.
We do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dominic.
Thank you, Farmer Sangay. Very interesting. But just following on from what Josiah just said, that we in the West, as the culprits, the villains of climate change, the emitters, and Bhutan and similar countries who have not been responsible for climate change, we owe you an obligation to support you. And I think that at the next COP, COP28, it's very important that we who have caused a lot of climate change damage support countries such as yours in any way we can. And I hope that that's going to happen.
Thank you. We are at the moment carbon neutral and also carbon sink to our neighboring carbon producers, let's say. And we have, I think, pledged many times in the COPs and many high-level UN meetings also. And we are dedicated to remain like that. And like you said, of course, it's difficult to sometimes see all this effect on us, which we are not responsible for. But we are optimistic as a human species. We are not going through that. I think we are happy that we could learn a lot from you all in the West, and we take it as a wisdom. Somebody has to take the cost anyway. That's the evolution, I believe.
Sorry, one more question here. Sorry? One more. Last question. Last question.
Wonderful talk and fantastic 2 days. Yes, I work at the Beth Chatto Education Trust, and we're all about the soil and following it on from Beth Chatto, who is obviously right plant, right place, and aware of the soil. And this year, particularly the summer, has been a nightmare, obviously. Thinking about crops and interested about your research and the research being done into not just growing annual crops, but thinking about watering the crops in Britain as well as where you are, but and growing more perennial crops. Have you thought, I mean, I'm sure you have thought, but interesting in Japan and places, where they eat a lot of hostas, and, I'm researching for the Learning Garden at the Beth Chattock Gardens, other perennial crops that we can eat from, centranthus, sea kale, all sorts of different perennials that will have deeper roots, and just varying our diet, whether it's a British diet or your diet maybe, with thinking about the climate and how we can change the way we grow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will think on that and take back your wisdom on that.
I think Joanne's going to make some closing remarks, so can I just before you do that, can I just say it's been an absolute joy, and I really do recommend that any of you just go and look at it. If you're feeling a little bit glum, or you think actually you're having a bit of a tough time, just literally go onto his Facebook page. I mean, it's just full of joy. Thank you so much.
Can I have one last
Hug.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you. Can I say a last word?
You're so wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Can I say a last word? Please say a last word.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, my friend, for giving us your support, your blessings, and your friendship, I would say. And I believe that Bhutan and UK shares a very special relationship for a long time. But it's more so far about a very diplomatic relationship. But in my life, I would like to create more of a people-to-people relationship between the farmers of my country and many farmers I met here, and also the supporters of nature, I would say. Of course, all human beings are coming from nature, so we would be a supporter of nature. And our country is going through a big change in last few years, and the kind of narrative we are building right now on the GNH and everything is also changing. And there are many tools such as Bhutan Believe. So if you say, what can you do the rest of the world to Bhutan, please believe in our dreams, believe in Bhutan, and keep on being a friend to us. It's not just the economic support, it's the goodwill, it's the belief, it's more important, I believe. If that is there, it's the foundation of all other progression and friendship. And I would like you all to also come and visit my country. And please welcome to my country. And after pandemic, we are really trying to build our tourism industry, which can also support and compensate or cross-subsidize most of the works in the farming or other sectors. And that's one way of your support, your way of support. Please spread the word and connect to me on Facebook. I have no business card. And I would love to meet you guys again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Sangay. Oh, wow. That was a perfect way to end EA Sustain. Really uplifting and heartfelt, and also just the buckets of charisma, wisdom spilling off the stage with John and Farmer Sangay in conversation. I just wanted to wrap up with a few words, and I'm going to try to string together some sentences here. I wanted to just say that this weekend has been truly phenomenal. We connected a lot of dots, especially between food, farming, and the environment. Related to that, I think that we were able to emphasize the fact that your choices every day can reinforce existing legacy business models, or they can encourage innovation and sustainability. And now that you're armed with the knowledge, you can actually make that choice count more probably. I hope that if you come away from EA Sustain with something, it's going to be that. On top of that, a lot of new wonderful connections were made. During a lot of the sessions, I underscored the importance of cooperation, collaboration, so that we can actually continue the momentum that was sparked by, for example, groundswell, but just more generally. I think it's become more obvious during this weekend that we can't just rely on government, that we ourselves need to band together more and work together so that we can really spark a groundswell of change. Now, the last but not least, I wanted to just, the two things that I'm the most proud of, however, are that First, there were a lot of speakers this weekend who had not spoken in front of a non-specialist public audience, and it was wonderful to see the penny drop because, like for example, we had a lot of farmers who ordinarily are talking to other farmers, and one of the reasons that I approached Groundswell in the first place is I was so struck, in some cases, thunderstruck by the quality of the content and the learnings that I walked away from the fair with, that I thought, oh my God, the public can definitely benefit from this, and it is its own kind of awakening. So that is, I think, something that I hope that we can continue. The fact that we had a really good turnout for this inaugural edition of EA Sustain also attests to an unmet need and a desire for this kind of information. So I hope that this is only the beginning of a new festival, and that I will see all of you for EA Sustain #2. Wait. Oh my God. I told you I was fried. Okay, also, last but not least, this is really loud. Thank you to everybody. First, to our sponsor, MMBP, who brought Farmer Sangay over here and is actually responsible for the wonderful Bhutan Believe campaign and is rebranding that entire country along the lines that Farmer Sangay described. I want to thank our host families, the Cottrells, the Gooches, the Pawseys, and Jane Hindley, and of course my team, Veronica, Georgie, and Jackie, and all of our volunteers. Please give a warm round of applause to them.